It's now time to start our first candidate interview. U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow is the senior United States Senator for the state of Michigan. Before her election to the Senate, she was a member of the House of Representatives, representing Michigan's 8th Congressional District. Previously, she served in the Michigan State Legislature and on the Ingham County Board of Commissioners. Senator Stabenow currently serves as the ranking member of the Senate Agricultural Committee and served as chair during the writing of the 2014 Farm Bill. Please help me welcome Senator Stabenow.
Absolutely. Well, good morning, everyone. I've been so looking forward to having a chance to have this discussion with all of you. And I want to start off first by thanking Carl as president and his team, John and Sarah and the policy team. I think we're on speed dial much of the time. And so I'm very grateful to have this working relationship with all of you. And I also want to make sure that I'm recognizing my chief of staff on the Agriculture Committee staff. I'm pretty biased, but I think we've got the best, most knowledgeable agriculture staff in Washington. And I want you to know that part of my affirmative action plan was hiring somebody from Ohio State, Joe Schultz, right over here. So Joe, thank you for your efforts. Many of you knew I grew up in Clare. Did anybody hear from Clare at the moment? I was one of the town kids, but very active in 4-H and enjoy. I've had a chance to go to a number of fairs and see what the young people are doing with livestock this year. I was in town, so I never had big animals, but I have been involved in agriculture, as you know, all my life. So both serving at every level of government on Agriculture Committee, because I think we don't have an economy unless somebody is willing to grow something, and that's what you do. We make things and grow things in Michigan, and that's how we have an economy, is because we make things and grow things. And there's not a riskier business than what you do, and that is certainly true today with all of the uncertainty. So whether it's low commodity prices and trade uncertainty and labor shortages and weather and pests and disease threats, I understand very much the things you're having to deal with on a daily basis. And I really believe, as your partner in Washington, that it's my job and my team's job to do everything we can to help. You know about the 2014 Farm Bill. I was proud, because of my leadership role, to actually have it signed at Michigan State University. And I'm happy to talk about that today if you would like. When we put that together in the negotiations back and forth with the House, we didn't end up where I wanted to be on dairy, and so we've gone back. I've pushed very hard in the last appropriations bill to have a major new investment in dairy, as well as in the bill that we just passed in the United States Senate. And so far, as a result of the fix that we made in the spring, we have about 1,100 dairy farmers who've been able to finally get some support. About $10 million has gone out in the last few weeks to dairy farmers because we've fixed some of the problems. And there's more to do, including good news yesterday that we were able to get a $50 million purchase for fluid milk from the USDA, and I saw Phil Corson back there. We worked together on the cherry purchase, 25 million, about 25 million pounds for our cherry growers as well, because of some challenges we've had with the country of Turkey. I know there's always more that I have to say than there is time to do it. I will just briefly say this. I'm happy to talk with you about the work I'm doing on Appropriations Committee. We've gotten new investments in high-speed internet. We've got right now about 1 million people that still don't have any access, and in Michigan alone, and that's critically important part of infrastructure, rural water investments, I've been involved in supporting the elimination of burdensome air quality reporting for livestock producers under CERCLA that we were able to get done, as well as other areas. Happy to talk about trade today. I know that's very much on your mind. And I have been front and center with both the Secretary of Agriculture and at the White House in presenting what is happening in terms of trade and the uncertainty there. And I would finally just say, on infrastructure, I'm also very involved in an effort on short-line rail. That's very important. A bipartisan effort is there. I work all the time across the aisle, even though there's a lot of craziness, always has been in D.C. I think my job is to put my head down and get things done for all of you. And very proud that Senator Roberts and I, after holding a hearing here in Michigan, in Kansas, and other places, were able to put together, even in the midst of everything happening, a farm bill this year that has had the largest bipartisan vote ever. We checked it out back to the Great Depression and the first farm bill, the largest vote ever in the United States Senate for a farm bill, 86-11. And Senator Roberts said 2 people were not there that would have voted yes, so he says it's 88-11. And it's that spirit of working together that I'm very proud of, and most importantly, getting results. Because anything that I do, I want to make sure in the end it actually makes things better for you and for people in Michigan. So I'm proud to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here, Senator Stabenow. We appreciate you sharing some of your time with us this morning. My name's Brian Preston. I'm a dairy farmer from Branch County.
Yes.
We also finished some hogs, but farm with my family, my father, uncle, and cousin.
Yes.
So that's
Well,
our
thank
business.
you. Yes.
Yeah. You listed a lot of the things you're working on, but I'd first like to ask you if you could prioritize for us, what would be your 3 top priorities to work on in this first year?
Well, right now, I think it's incredibly important that you have some certainty. And I think that comes in a number of areas. First, what I can help create certainty in is having the next 5-year farm bill with strong crop insurance, a strong commodity title that works for us, including improved dairy provisions, as well as conservation efforts, rural development, and so on. So I can do that, and Senator Roberts are saying, with everything else that's going on and the uncertainty that you have, we need to get a 5-year farm bill done right away. We're going to be on the phone again tomorrow. Just so you know, we have a House version, a Senate version. We're now negotiating the final bill. I'm deeply involved in that along with my team, and we're going to do everything possible to get that done. Secondly, and I know right now on the minds of everyone, is what's happening on trade. And while I don't make those decisions, I have weighed in heavily. I'm proud to say that in the last farm bill, we created for the first time an undersecretary of trade. We've filled that position with a good person. We have an ag negotiator at the USTR, Greg Dowd, who I talk to on a regular basis, as well as the U.S. trade rep. I'm very concerned, though, that the administration has taken on sort of everybody all at the same time, and made it very difficult right now to be able to bring things to a conclusion, whether it's NAFTA or whether what's happening with the EU, which is also critically important for our markets. I mean, you are the trade surplus. We are the trade surplus. In Michigan alone, about $1 billion. And so I know trade is incredibly important. And then I would say I hear constantly about labor, and we need a comprehensive immigration reform bill that creates a legal way where you can feel confident that you will get the workers you need in a legal way, while we are, of course, protecting our security and American jobs. So right now, that's what I'm hearing the most.
Thank you. What is your view of the role of biotechnology in food and agriculture, and what do you believe is the government's role in that debate?
I support biotechnology. I believe in science. And I was in the middle of one of the toughest negotiations that I ever had to do and we spent about 2 years on a whole question of genetically modified organisms, GMOs, and whoever created that name ought to be shot. That name is ridiculous. This is about green technology. This is about science. And I felt very strongly that when Vermont put their own standards together at the state level, that it was going to be really a mess for everyone in the food industry, from producers to our processors and retailers, to have 50 different standards on GMOs. And so we went to work on that, and very difficult negotiations, but I believe came up with a framework that says you can't do it state by state. It has to be done with a national standard, which is now in place. The USDA is working through the rules on that as to, on labeling and so on, but we know that we have a national standard. Beyond that, I would say on biotechnology, research is critical. We put together a foundation in the last Farm Bill, a public-private partnership. Michigan State's very involved in that, and to bring private dollars and public dollars to continue to focus on research and new technologies. We know that science and technology is something that is critical to your success, and I'm very supportive in every way for us to be able to support through research and creating the standards that are needed, but then stepping back and letting the science and the innovators take over.
Okay. Many sectors of our agriculture industry are in very poor economic conditions,
Yeah.
And have been for a period of years. It's a very stressful time financially for our farmers. What policies or initiatives would you lead that could cause a positive impact?
Well, this is something I work on every day. When we wrote the last Farm Bill, we had high prices. And now, we've seen prices drop 50%. We've seen all of the insecurity. We've seen what's happened in dairy, and as well as in other areas. And so for me, this is a continuation of creating risk management tools that support what you do, and creating the support, whether that is research, whether it's trade marketing, and we've strengthened in this new Farm Bill even more trade marketing assistance, MAP, and other things that are frankly even more needed as we look at what's happening here around changing markets, and making sure that we have a commodity title and conservation titles that work. Now, I'm going to just go back for a minute and say that when I first got involved, went to the United States House, was on the Ag Committee, and then to the U.S. Senate, there were a big group of growers in Michigan and product and crops that were not included in the Farm Bill at all. There was no title, and that's called specialty crops. And over the years, I have worked starting with a pilot project on crop insurance, and other small provisions on research, and finally in 2008, I was able to author a new title in the Farm Bill. Now, that may sound simple, but they don't create new titles in the Farm Bill. It was very hard. It was a very hard fight. But now we have 12 titles in the Farm Bill. One is for specialty crops. And I say that to say we need to be supporting all parts of agriculture, large and small. And so my goal, coming from the second largest, most diverse agricultural state in the country, which I'm proud to tell everybody all the time, I focus on all of the sectors, whether that be on our grains and fruits and vegetables, dairy, other livestock, horticulture, Christmas trees. I mean, we have it all. And so I focus very broadly on what we can do to create support for you on risk management tools and to create certainty.
Thank you, Senator.
Sure.
So my name is Chris Crager. I'm from Tuscola County, and my day job is to work as a territory manager for a multinational seed company, so I appreciated your comments on biotechnology.
Yes.
The three issues that I'll ask you about, you've already kind of touched on. The first is international trade. You mentioned that trade is critically important, not only for agriculture, but also for the economic viability of our state. There's a few things happening right now on the trade front internationally, right? What are your views? You touched on NAFTA. What are your views on modernizing NAFTA? And how should the U.S. move forward in these other trade debates and negotiations?
Well, first, I was in Tuscola County on Monday, and it's a beautiful place. Trade, as we know, is complicated, but let me start with the basics. Farmers need markets. It's not about subsidies or temporary help with payments. It's about markets. That's what we need. I do think that it makes sense to update NAFTA. There are things that, frankly, technologies that were not even around in 1994 for us to be concerned about, and I think that makes sense. I think that I'd love to I keep pushing all the time with Canada and dairy and Class 7 milk. I think I saw Ken Nobis back here somewhere. We've got ongoing challenges that I've raised multiple times, by the way, including with the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, in meetings that I've been in. And we certainly have other issues that we need to watch around Mexico. And from a manufacturing standpoint, there's issues in terms of a level playing field on Mexico that are very important to us. But we also know they are not only our trading partners, but are our markets, certainly Mexico, when we're looking at dairy or sugar or other soybeans and so on, and Canada as well. And so first, I would say, if we're going to renegotiate NAFTA, which is important to do, that's great. If you're thoughtful, you've got folks that really understand the full impact, which, by the way, Senator Roberts and I, who are both senior members on the Finance Committee, which oversees, among many things, oversees trade, we're the ones constantly talking about agriculture. We didn't hear the administration talking about ag. We keep bringing that up. But if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Let's get it done, and then go focus on other issues. I personally believe that China is a bad actor in a number of ways. They steal our patents. I agree with the president on focusing on them, but we don't do that while we're also creating a trade war with all of our allies. We should do that with all of them behind us so that we're more effective. So, we need that international, that North American trade agreement, and I believe there are things that we can do to strengthen it. But right now, when at the same time we're negotiating NAFTA, the White House is calling Canada a national security threat with Section 232 trade agreement, that is not helpful to us at the moment. So my advice to them is to step back, do this one at a time, get it right, and not create a situation where, frankly, all of you, our producers, are caught in the middle here. I mean, that's what's being used, is agriculture. And we can't afford that collateral damage as these negotiations are taking place.
Thank you. You also touched on labor and mentioned
Yes.
that the need for legal, skilled, and reliable labor in agriculture is a constant and growing need for farms. Immigration reform is the responsibility of the federal government and is desperately needed. Do you support a new guest worker program for agriculture that can be used by all sectors, including livestock and dairy? And secondly, what do you believe should be the path for those workers who are currently here and working illegally?
I do support a guest worker program. Senator Feinstein has a bill, she's had it for some time, that I support and have been part of, that actually would create, as you know, instead of a green card, a blue card, an agriculture process where folks could come legally, go home, or go to another part of the country, come back, and basically have the certainty then that they are here legally, and they would have the capacity to come to the country and then to go home and then to come back and forth. And I think that's very important. A few years ago, I think it was 2014, 2015, we passed a comprehensive immigration reform bill in the Senate by a very large vote. And it was really a lost opportunity when the House didn't take that up at all. Because since then, we've been in a spot where we've not been able to get beyond the politics to really look at how we have an immigration system that works. In the context of comprehensive immigration, we have to address those who have been here and they are not here legally. And that means going to the back of the line and paying fines and learning English and waiting their turn and so on. But there has to be, as a part of that, I think, to make it work, some kind of a process. What I'm most concerned about for us is the lack of capacity in our economy to have businesses and farmers have some confidence that there is a system here that is legal and that will work. And of course, under all of this, we all understand that security issues, of course, are always a part of, this a critical part of this as well.
Thank you. And the last question that I will ask is revolving around infrastructure that you also mentioned. As you know, agriculture is highly dependent on a modern and efficient infrastructure.
Yes.
We still have a long ways to go in repairing and upgrading our roads and bridges, ports and locks, and providing access to high-speed internet in many areas of our state. What specific initiatives would you support, and where does the funding come from?
Well, I absolutely support a major infrastructure program. We're long overdue on this. I mean, we're a great country. When I travel, though, and have the opportunity on an agriculture trip to Brazil and look what they're doing on railroads and ports and roads, or what China's doing, and I mean, every other country is doing major investments in modernizing an infrastructure, and we're way behind on this. And so whether it is, now when I include infrastructure, I also include, though, high-speed internet. And we've got to talk about 21st century infrastructure as well. So it's road, bridges, water, sewer systems, rail, and in terms, also short-line rail, and it's high-speed internet as part of all of that. From my perspective, I would rather, in terms of paying for it, I have been supportive of a plan that would frankly close loopholes that have been sending jobs overseas, and I would take the tax bill that passed and take it to a point where instead of a $1.5 trillion deficit which was created, with closing no loopholes on what happens in terms of going overseas. And let me just mention one of them, which is just simple things like if a business picks up and moves overseas, you and I as taxpayers pay for the move. People who lost their job pay for the move. That makes no sense to me. We ought to be closing things up and stopping that offshoring. So if we did some offshoring and did some right sizing, and we're in talking about focusing on, in my case, Michigan jobs and farmers and middle-class families, you can pair that to a point where you could actually do a major infrastructure bill without creating $1.5 trillion in deficit. So I personally think that what was done in a way that was not responsible, and that there's a better way to do it, and I'd like to see us be more focused on American jobs and using some of those other dollars. For instance, there was a brand new loophole created for big oil for $4 billion. I don't think that makes sense right now, while we fight, by the way, for biofuels and the RFS standards. So I'd love to take some what I think were the excesses of some of that and pull it in and take those dollars and use it to rebuild America.
Thank you. Good morning, Senator
Good morning.
Stabenow. This is Carrie Houston. My husband and I run a livestock trucking company. It's second generation, and our son has started his own, third generation. We also have small cow-calf herd and horses. And then also with the Houston family, we have a large agri-tourism business taking place Labor Day weekend, the Houston Cow Camp Rodeo.
Yay.
So we invite campers over 400 acres and the rodeo. But in these businesses, I have found that we have excessive, duplicative, and unnecessary regulations at the federal level. They are a real impediment to new and business startup and economic growth for agriculture and many other industries. Please share with us a few specific examples of regulations you would work to eliminate.
Well, one I mentioned in my opening on CERCLA on air quality regulations, where there was excessive proposals for livestock owners in terms of reporting, and so we have eliminated that. We're also struggling, Senator Fisher in the appropriations process a week ago got a 1-year delay as it relates to hours of service in terms of trucking and so on, which is another issue we have to work through. It's controversial. We have safety advocates on one side and livestock producers on the other side. So I'm hopeful that the year that she bought us in terms of being able to say we're gonna not move forward on those regulations for a year, that'll give us some time to work that out. I will also say that in general, not specific just to livestock, but when I chaired the Agriculture Committee 5 years ago, I directed the staff to not focus on how do you protect programs, but let's look at functions, what the USDA does, what the Farm Bill does, what works, what doesn't work, and if something's not working or it hasn't been used in a long time, then let's get rid of it. So we ended up in that process actually eliminating or consolidating 100 different programs. And at this point, it looks like the savings overall from that are going to be about $80 billion over the next 10 years. We started out to cut $23 billion, but the way it was done, it was more like 80. And we were the only area of the federal government that took seriously oversight and streamlining and trying to right-size and save taxpayer money. I wish every single committee had gone through the process that we went through, because that would put us in a situation now where we would be able to save a lot more.
As in the trucking industry, though, it is safety first.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. The climate in Washington is more partisan now than ever. Many of the issues we advocate for in member policy have traditionally been bipartisan in nature. What will you do if elected to work across party lines to find solutions for our industry? And what have you done in the past to achieve bipartisan results?
Well, to me, that's an easy one for me. That's in my DNA, and I'm very proud of the fact that I work across the aisle and probably get more done than almost any other member. I can't say any member, but because I work across the aisle and have good relationships and good people to work with across the aisle, and we get things done. It starts with the Farm Bill. Again, 5 years ago, it was still a tough time. It's harder now, but we've managed in all of that to get the Farm Bill 5 years ago and the Farm Bill now, as well as moving through the process to help dairy and appropriations to be able to deal with the air pollution regulations or over-regulation from CERCLA. I mean, there's a number of things that I can point to that because I work across the aisle every day. I mean, the bottom line is you don't get things done unless you work across the aisle. And traditionally, agriculture has been a wonderful place to be where we may fight with the South, we may fight with cotton and peanuts and rice, but it's regional. It's been by commodity. It's not been based on partisanship. So I work very, very hard to try to keep it that way. Now, it's gone a little bit off the rails in the House. They ended up passing a partisan farm bill. It took them 2 times to do it, and the second time they only were successful by 2 votes. But I'll tell you, in the Senate, we work really, really hard to keep the partisan politics out of things, and that's how we got Sonny Perdue through the committee as the Secretary of Agriculture in record time. That's how we fill positions. That's how we get a farm bill, because bottom line, you need us to get stuff done.
Thank you, Senator. Question from the audience. With concerns about Western Lake Erie, most of the dollars to help farmers to improve practices are at the NRCS. The process of NRCS is long and slow. How can you improve the NRCS delivery process?
This is a really important question, and when we put together in the last Farm Bill what we call the Regional Conservation Program to give more control and decision-making to the local level, to farmers, states, local stakeholders, I've heard it's been a good program in Lake Erie. I mean, we've now got a partnership both with Michigan and Ohio, and Indiana's involved in this as well, to support voluntary efforts, practices of farmers. But I've heard a lot about there being a slow process. And we have met with a lot of folks who've told us this process didn't work very well, and so we've made a lot of changes in this new farm bill that I hope is really going to help. I introduced a bill based on the feedback that I received from everybody in Michigan, a bipartisan bill with Senator Joni Ernst from Iowa, and that particular bill making changes and streamlining and making decision-making better and quicker is something that's in the farm bill. So I hope it's going to work.
Okay, one more question from the audience. Would you support a proposal that would replace the current EPA structure with a committee of the whole made up of 50 state environmental agencies?
Well, I don't know. It sounds like an awful lot of bureaucracy to me, although the EPA, we fight that bureaucracy all the time as well. You know, I don't know. I would certainly take a look at it. I mean, I think what we need, you know, my worry would be, does that mean that regulations then become different state by state by state? That's not in our interest to do that. So I'd have to really look at that. I mean, we're constantly trying to get federal standards so you don't have to worry state by state. And, you know, I would have a lot of questions about that. Certainly always open to new ideas, but a lot of questions come up immediately on that to me.
Thank you, Senator. Would you please now like to make a 2-minute closing statement?
Well, thank you so much. As I said at the beginning, I've been looking forward to coming and having a chance to talk with you. I appreciate all of these issues being on speed dial with the Farm Bureau. And from my perspective, what I offer is the experience and seniority that allows us to get results. It makes a difference if you know what you're doing, and if you have good relationships and know how to get things done. And we wouldn't have been able to have the success on dairy and appropriations, which was a very big fight with the South, by the way. They don't say cotton is king for nothing. It was a big fight. And I was able to do that because of my relationships, seniority, and the capacity to know how to get things done. And so I bring that to you. When we were taking on the USDA on what happened in Lenawee County on CRP, and which is still in the process of being fixed, but we were able to back them down and finally get them to admit that they were wrong on the decisions that they had made on CRP and buffer strips. And that happened because I'm in the right spot to do that. I'm in the right spot to do that as the senior, as the ranking member on agriculture. And so that's what I offer, is the ability to keep getting things done for all of you. And I'm going to roll up my sleeves every single day and go to work. And I have to tell you, agriculture, farmers, our ranchers are at the top of my list. It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's thank the Senator for her time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now it's time to hear from our second candidate running for the United States Senate, Mr. John James. Mr. James served our nation for 8 years. The former Army captain was honorably discharged and returned to Michigan to work in his family business, James Group International. In addition to his Bachelor of Science from the United States Military Academy, West Point, John has earned a Master of Supply Chain Management and Information Systems from Penn State University and a Master's in Business Administration from the University of Michigan. Let's welcome Mr. John James.
Well,
welcome, Mr. James. Oh, sorry. Please start by making a 5-minute opening comment.
5-minute opening comment. Well, I like to start by blaming my friend Wayne Wood for telling me not to show up with a jacket on. I feel a little bit underdressed, so he told me khakis and a blue shirt, and I complied. But Mr. Wood has been very supportive, and I appreciate his friendship and his tutelage in helping mentor me through this process. The Farm Bureau process, I think, is how the federal government should work. It starts with volunteer organization. 100 years celebrating this year, correct? 100 years? It's extremely admirable for a volunteer organization to do the work that you've been doing, and understanding that it starts at the grassroots from a volunteer level and then influencing up to the federal level. That's truly the way I believe that government was intended to function when our founding fathers set out this new social experiment called the United States of America. It's such an honor to be before you here today, and I'm here truly not because I have any burning desire to check off anything on a bucket list. I'm not going to Washington because I want to establish some prestige. I'm going because I have a passion for service. I'm going because I truly believe that those of us who have the blessings, those of us who've been given the gift of God to have the means to live and to win this lottery and be an American citizen, have an obligation, not an option to serve. That is why I went to West Point. As you heard in the brief bio, I left when I was 17 years old, became a West Point cadet, graduated in 2004, became a Ranger qualified Apache pilot. I then had the opportunity to go serve in combat as a Ranger qualified Apache pilot in Baghdad, Operation Iraqi Freedom. And I did that because I knew that I had to step up, I had to sacrifice, I had to use my discipline to lead men and women in combat to stand up for this country that is so great. 1% of the people who've ever lived in this world have breathed free, and we are a part of that 1%. And that is not passed along in our bloodstream the way President Ronald Reagan has told us, but it is passed along generation after generation of patriot who are willing to stand up in their local communities and in their country to make sure that we can continue to breathe free. But one thing that actually struck me while I was over in Iraq, one thing among the many things that struck me, that disturbed me, is when I came back from one combat mission in particular, I was really struck by the situation that we were feeling back here at home in Michigan. There were areas of my home, Michigan, Detroit, Saginaw, Clare, Muskegon, Alpena, areas in home that looked worse than the combat zone I was flying in. People here who were still desperate. People here that were hit hardest in the agriculture and automotive industries, hit hard. Half of all the jobs that were lost during the Great Recession were lost right here in the state of Michigan. So I came back home to do what I could to serve in my community the way I served my country, to invest in my time and in myself, and using that selfless service that I believe so much of, and came back and I served and I helped create jobs in Detroit and around the area of Michigan and east of the Mississippi, created over 100 jobs, and grew my family business from $35 million to $137 million. I understand what it's like to sign the front and the back of a check. I understand what it's like to put your own capital at risk. I understand what it's like to have the responsibility for families, for their livelihoods. I understand as a small family business owner what it takes, especially the alignment that we have, because 88% of the farms in the state of Michigan are family businesses. We just want to be able to have the government get out of our way. We need help sometimes, but most of the time we need to work our fields, we need to run our businesses, and we just want to raise our families. And I understand what that's like on an elemental level. And so I'm looking forward to continue to relate to folks who I'm trying to represent, understanding that you're the experts, and understanding that we need to get the federal government out of the way as much as possible. I understand as a business leader in my family business, the things that I really spend most of my time on are trade, regulations, labor. And those are some of the same things that you spend most of your time on. So I'm looking forward to being an asset and an ally, getting results. Three rules that we had in the United States Army that helped me out the most in my business. 3 rules, 3 simple rules. Number 1, no excuses. No excuses from our leadership for why we didn't accomplish mission and why they haven't before and why they won't in the future. Number 2, mission first, people always. No false dilemmas. You have to make sure that you execute mission first, people always. You're doing what we send you to Washington to do, but you're also taking care of the people at the grassroots level. And finally, leaders eat last. Understanding the essence of leadership is to represent the people who sent you there in the first place and to never fail them and betray them and to make sure that you take care of their needs before your own. That is how you lead effectively. So I'm getting the Time's Up card. That's very good, sir. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Monty Bordner from St. Joseph County down on the state line, southern Michigan. Our family's in the purebred Angus cattle business and have been in the township there since the mid-1800s. First off, I'd like to welcome you, Mr. James, for coming today. Thank you, and thank you for your service. And we look forward to hearing what you have to share, your ideas and thoughts about what it would be to be a senator in Washington, D.C. If elected in November, what would be your top 3 priorities for you you would like to work on in the first year?
So something that's very near and dear to my heart, and I'm a bit of a homer, forgive me, but the way we treat our veterans in this country, I find embarrassing. We're very good at creating veterans, but not so good at taking care of them when we get back home. One of my very first priorities is going to be doing everything that we can to wrap our arms around our veterans, to take care of making sure that our Vietnam veterans are properly welcomed back home when they weren't 50 years ago, and making sure that we address the issues of people who are returning home with broken minds and broken hearts and with broken dreams, and making sure that we take care of our veterans and make sure the toughest battles that we fight are not when we get back off the battlefield. I also believe that we need to do a significant amount to make sure that we continue to focus on our economy. And I think an essential area of growing our economy is making sure that we have we're looking at economic opportunity. And understanding how to create business and how to create economic opportunity in those jobs is more than just jobs. Those jobs are a part of the equation. They're not a solution on their own. We need to take a look at education, K through 12 education, workforce development, having a comprehensive immigration reform, which includes guest visas, legal immigration, so that our farmers and our factories can have the labor that they need legally to continue to grow our economy. We also need to take a look at criminal justice reform. We need to make sure that we're taking a look at the role of entrepreneurship, rolling back harmful regulations that hurt our ability to continue to grow our economy. And I would say third, I would look at what we're doing to keep our country safe. National security is very important to me. And as we see growing spheres of communist influence that will affect trade and affect our security here at home, I'm looking forward to bringing my experience in national security to bear to make sure that we keep our nation safe. I have experience with national security because I've kept Americans safe before. So I would say taking care of our veterans, making sure we continue to grow our economy, and making sure that we keep our country strong and safe.
Thank you. What is your view of the role of biotechnology in food and agriculture? And what do you believe is the government's role in that debate?
I think that GMOs are so as far as all regulation, my litmus test is going to be preemptive regulation is problematic. We, the people, have not delegated certain authority to the federal government, and the federal government was not meant to regulate everything. And so I truly believe that when you take a look at specifics, in general, we need to look at science-based, common sense regulations that are affordable, that are achievable, and that are constitutional. I think that GMOs are supported by science. There are GMOs in cotton and oranges. Why not GMOs in say, beets, for example? I think that we need to take a look at reason, have reasonable, common sense regulations, and where supported by science and common sense, I would support biogenetics and as applicable.
Thank you. Many sectors of our agriculture industry are in very poor economic conditions and have been for a period of years. It has been a very stressful time financially for our farmers. What policies or initiatives would you lead that could have a positive impact?
So there's a number of things. As a family business owner myself, I just want to have the opportunity to be able to have a level playing field and compete. I think that looking at regulations and looking at anything that, like the REINS Act is a great example. The REINS Act is an example of legislation that has been sitting out there for a long time and hasn't been able to get pulled through the Senate. And this is an opportunity that we can hold bureaucrats accountable. Hello? Hello? Oh, it's not my phone, sorry. This is a way that we can hold federal bureaucrats accountable for the regulations that have an impact of $100 million or more on our industries. I would also make sure that we support helping our farmers, because when you take a look at the stresses that we feel, as I've been traveling around the state learning from the farmers, aside from the trade issues, you're taking a look at regulatory issues that are crushing. From MRO regulations, subsidies that people are facing. When you take a look at labor, talking with farmers who are having to mow over their asparagus, having their cherries hit the ground, not getting the adequate trained workforce to pick apples so they're not bruised. These are things that we can work with the Department of State, work with the Department of Labor, work with the USDA, FDA, and EPA to make sure that we don't have these regulations that are impeding our farmers' abilities to compete, to live, to provide for their families. And I think that just being with that liaison, not resisting, but getting results and putting the American people, putting Michiganders before my own political agenda and getting results the way I have from the battlefield to the boardroom. People don't necessarily care about the partisan BS. They just want to make sure they can pass their farm. They want to pass their family business on to the next generation. And when you have someone who supports the death tax, which is literally a tax on the American dream, that's another thing that we need to make sure that these are the regulations that get in our way of making sure that we can compete and to grow and to have access to the American dream. My goodness, I could talk about this forever, but I won't. I only have 45 minutes, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Norman Miller. I'm from Northeast Michigan. Our Farm Bureau district encompasses 3 counties, Montmorency, Alpena, and Alcona counties.
Thank you for being here, sir.
International trade is critically important, not only to agriculture, but for the economic viability of our state. There is a lot happening right now on the trade front. What are your views on modernizing NAFTA, and how should the U.S. move towards in all of these trade debates and negotiations?
Remember me, thank you for that question. Remember this, trade, not aid. We don't need free stuff. We need a fair shot. We understand how to compete, and when given a level playing field, we will compete and win domestically and globally every single time. I believe very, very strongly in free but fair trade. I believe that our focus, I would see myself as a business leader, being one of the chief business development officers for the state of Michigan in the agriculture industry and all the industries. I'm looking forward to putting the work in to see what we can do to expand agriculture into other global markets and to make sure that we can compete against, like, not just tariffs that we're talking so much about, but non-tariff barriers. Like I mentioned, the MROs on cherries and the unreasonable limits that we're seeing in amongst our trading partners, say particularly in Europe. And you're taking a look at, just saying cherries again, because it's kind of top of mind these days, with Turkey dumping tart cherry concentrate far below the cost of production, and then you take a look at what they're doing over in Turkey, subsidizing these trees, that's unfair. And so I believe that trade is essential, absolutely essential, and free but fair trade is absolutely essential. As far as NAFTA goes, NAFTA went through when I was in 8th grade. Since then, towers have fallen. Cell phones have come up. We need to modernize NAFTA. We need to optimize NAFTA. We need to bring it into the 21st century. But we need to do it in a manner where we protect Michigan jobs, where we secure our borders, and we defend our constitutional rights. I believe that we're making remarkable headway on an agreement that was done back in the mid-90s. And I'm looking forward to moving that forward in a manner that benefits. But as we're talking about the trade situations that we're getting in, that's something that I'm looking forward to supporting, understanding that I deal with tax, tariff, and trade every single day with my international export business.
The need for legal, skilled, and reliable labor force in agriculture is a constant and growing need for farms. Immigration reform is the responsibility of the federal government and is desperately needed. Do you support a new guest workers program
Absolutely.
for agriculture?
Absolutely. I didn't have to wait on that one. That legal immigration is an economic and moral imperative for the United States of America. This is not a partisan issue. And those who would raise money and continue to divide over this and use this as a method to divide us, I think are not leading effectively. I believe that we must have a legal guest worker program, because you have people who are literally, folks who are in this room, literally in a situation where they may lose the farm. And we have someone representing us in Washington who has had the opportunity to move something forward and has not. I understand that she says she's going to work across the aisle all of a sudden when the American Farm Bureau Federation, the most recent congressional scorecard, gave her 50%, and Michigan Farm Bureau gave her 61% for her voting record. She's had the opportunity to work across the aisle in passing the REINS Act. And she supported the Waters of the U.S., the death tax, and she hasn't been able to help bridge this labor gap, because there are areas in this state where the applicable workforce is not present. The H-2A program needs to be modernized and hopefully moved into, until we can get immigration reform done, a comprehensive guest worker program that helps agricultural communities and to be able to get asparagus out of ground, get apples off the trees without bruising them, be able to make sure that, you know what, the cows need to be milked 365 days a year. That's something that needs to be considered. These are all things that we need to do to make sure that our farmers, under the pressure that they have the resources and the support that they need in Washington to get them the support. So I absolutely support fixing our broken legal immigration system. I believe that guest workers play a key role, and I'm looking forward to doing everything I can to support the farming industry in the state of Michigan, making sure that we have the labor we need so our farmers can compete.
Agriculture is dependent on a modern infrastructure. We still have a long way to go in repairing our roads and bridges, ports and docks, and providing access to high-speed internet in many areas of our state. What specific interactives would you support, and where does the funding come from?
The specific interactives? Well, rural infrastructure is the link that our farms have with the rest of the world. We don't eat unless we get it there. And when you take a look at some, again, regulations, I'm run a logistics company. I understand some of the new regulations that came up with trucks and freight. And being able to not just get, say, fruit off the trees or get things from the farm, but if you can't get a truck to bring your stuff to market or take it to the processing facility, then that's an additional headwind cost barrier that we're facing. And these are things that we need to help support. So we also, as we're moving forward into the digital economy, we have half our state that doesn't have reliable broadband or cell phone access. I think that in order to fund this, I think that we need to start taking a look at like I was talking about before, the REINS Act. Looking at moving forward the burdensome regulations that have an impact of $100 million or more on our economy. We have unelected bureaucrats that have an unwieldy and very strong kind of hold on the regulations and the money that we're spending. I think that abiding by a budget process, I stand by saying that we need to have a constitutional amendment for a balanced budget, making sure that we abide by the budgeting process and continue to fight fraud, waste, and abuse. As a lean practitioner, running a supply chain company, understanding what it takes to cut costs and boost efficiencies in businesses. You have too many people in Washington trying to regulate industries, and they never run a business before. I think that there are great opportunities to boost efficiency, to cut costs with low-hanging fruit, and to have congressional oversight of federal bureaucracy to get the money to pay for additional investment. Also, rolling back barriers those preemptive regulations that would stifle private enterprise and private business and in the free market from innovating themselves. The federal government is not the answer for all of our ills, but I believe the federal government getting out of the way and allowing the private sector to solve some of these problems, I think, is a way that I could be of assistance when I get to Washington.
First of all, I'd like to say, Mr. James, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And I'm Brian Bush. I'm from Chippewa County, which is up in the other peninsula. And, and the question is, excessive duplicate, unnecessary regulations at the federal level are a real impediment to new businesses and startup and economic growth for agriculture and many other industries. Please share with us a few specific examples of regulations that you would work to eliminate.
So, who here loves our Great Lakes? I should see every hand, right? Who here wants clean air and clean water? I should see every hand. Nobody wants clean air and clean water more than a farmer. No one will protect our air and our water more than a rancher. But you see federal overreach that neither makes common sense nor has a common good. I believe that overreaching regulations that are, honestly, I would consider insulting. For someone who is trying to pass on a farm that's generations old to the subsequent generations, I would find it insulting when somebody from the federal government says they know how to handle your land better than you do. So I would work very, very closely with you to see what we could do to make sure that that clean air and clean water regulations that are not unnecessarily draconian or expensive. And as I said before, science-based, common sense, affordable, achievable, and constitutional. I think that's what a regulation should be, and we must protect our Great Lakes. We must protect our clean air and our clean water, but we also must do so in a manner that does not put our farmers out of business.
The climate in Washington is more partisan now than ever. Many of the issues we advocate for in member policies have traditionally been bipartisan in nature. What will you do if elected to work across party lines to find solutions for our industry?
I hate politics. I hate politics. I think that both political parties have failed the American people. I'm a conservative who's running in the Republican Party because the Republican Party platform aligns most closely with my values: faith and family, God and country, and service before self. I was raised by a man who lived directly across the street from Mississippi State University and couldn't go there because he was black. But because he refused to accept dependency as his destiny, like many of you and like many of your families have, he worked his tail off, served in Vietnam honorably, and started his own company with one truck, one trailer, and no excuses. He beat the odds. He beat the odds. He had every excuse and didn't take them. He refused to accept victimhood. And I think that right now we have a situation in this country where too few people feel like they have access to the American dream. And one side is blaming big government, the other side is blaming big business. We're playing one side against the other, and we, the people, are the ones who are getting crushed. I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States to support and defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that includes people who are unwilling to work together, who have forgotten that we are all Americans. I have experience working with people, bringing them together from different colors, races, creeds, gender, bringing them together not to do what they want to do, but to do what they have to do to make sure that the unit succeeds, to make sure the business succeeds. I have the experience working with a unit the size of 100 and making sure that we accomplish mission and we get results. And so when somebody says they're going to try to work across the aisle, you take a look at their record and what they've done in the past. You ask them about all this resistance. You ask them about voting with Chuck Schumer 95% of the time. How bipartisan is that? Or you can ask somebody what you do in the military. Is it about black and white, or is it about red, white, and blue? Because the thing is, I believe, I'm just going to tell you right now, We cannot afford 6 more years of the status quo. We cannot afford having people who will choose politics over people. We have an opportunity now to send someone who has a record of dedication to the people of this country, who has a track record of experience from the battlefield to the boardroom, getting results, putting the partisan BS behind him, and moving forward to the greater good of the American people, Michigan people, and for our farmers. That is what I pledge to you because it's what I've done all my life. I've gotten results. I've made no excuses. And that's what I will do when I represent you in Washington.
Thank you. We have just a couple minutes left. I have a couple of questions from the audience. If elected, what committee assignments do you feel would be good fit for you, experience and expertise?
Ag. No, but seriously, I have to tell you that I love learning. Really, I'm a really big nerd. I love learning new things. And over the past year, working with the Farm Bureau and coming from the automotive industry, I'm just a dumb pilot, right? I just fly and blow things up. But learning about the hard work that you put in and day out to literally keep us alive, I've really kind of grown a strong admiration for the work you put in. I would strongly consider an appointment to replace Senator Stabenow on the Agricultural Committee, and I believe that over the next 2 years, having a senator on the Agricultural Committee who is actually willing to work with the president, bless you, to get results for the state of Michigan, rather than to resist at every turn, and now talks about bipartisanship when it's time to get reelected, I think that's a much stronger position. I also think armed forces, but I also think that because of my experience with taxes, tariff, and trade in my current business, finance would be good. But the core thing is what is best for the state of Michigan. If my understanding of business and the military would allow me to influence the armed forces and finance committees, and I join 2 other committees, say ag and another one, then my influence over 4 committees informally will actually help Michigan's influence and strength. And that's what I'm all about. So I would say right now, standing before you, not pandering, I tell you agriculture and armed forces, and I would stay there.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you again. That concludes our questions. Would you like to take 2 minutes for closing comments?
Sure. Confucius say never turn down microphone time when you have it as a politician now, I guess. So I appreciate you listening. I appreciate the work that you put in and day out in your thankless jobs many, many times. And I want to tell you, and I want to look you each in the eyes and those who are listening or recording or whatever, I have been in a position where people have counted on me, people behind me who I've led into battle have counted on me to make good decisions, split-second decisions, life and death decisions. And the same people on the ground who have counted on me to make those split-second decisions, life and death decisions, who are counting on me. I recognize and understand the awesome responsibility that you're entrusting me to go with, but I'll tell you, there's no substitute for experience, none. And there is no substitute for results, none. I have the experience both understanding national security and creating economic opportunity in the toughest of situations, from Baghdad to growing jobs in Detroit. And I understand how to get results growing my business and understanding how family business works. I have not let the American people down yet, and I will not let the people of the state of Michigan down. As a member of the Oakland County Farm Bureau, I'm looking forward to growing in my relationship with the Michigan Farm Bureau and being an advocate for many, many years. I believe that right now we have a situation where our farmers feel neglected, like they feel let down. And I'm telling you, based upon everything that I have done, I will not let you down. I would very much appreciate your strong consideration, the endorsement of my candidacy. I thank you for this time. God bless you.
Thank you. Let's thank Mr. John James. Welcome back, everyone. It's time to hear from our next candidate, Attorney General Bill Schuette. Mr. Schuette has served as Attorney General, Michigan Court of Appeals Judge, State Senator, Michigan Agricultural Director, United States Congressman. While serving in the United States House of Representatives, Mr. Schuette served on the Agricultural Committee. Let's welcome Attorney Bill Schuette. Welcome, Mr. Schuette.
Thank you.
Please start out by giving us a 5-minute introduction.
Only 5? Oh my goodness. Well, listen, I am delighted to be here. My name is Bill Schuette. I am your on-duty Attorney General, and I've been on duty for production agriculture for a long time. And I am delighted to be in your company. Thank you, Patrick, for your introduction. And I'm thrilled to be here. And a special announcement, I want you to meet someone many of you will know, and an outstanding leader from Michigan, a former state representative, an FFA girl, a production agriculture person, a credible talent, an education leader, someone who's smart, articulate, determined, and a magnificent choice to be the next Lieutenant Governor of the state of Michigan, Lisa Posthumus-Lyons. Will you take a bow, please? You know her from agriculture, folks. So Lisa and I have a broad background in a variety of different issues, and when you're talking about agriculture, Lisa and I are top shelf for you. I have come from a little town called Midland, and I appreciate Nathan Clark as a Farm Bureau representative for that region. And I hail from Midland. My grandfather was a shop teacher. My grandmother was an elementary school teacher. And my mom and dad were high school sweethearts. They grew up in the Great Depression, a time of in Michigan's history, in America's history, where people were out of work, out of luck, out of hope. My dad was able to land a job at Dow Chemical in Midland. He and my mom, the high school sweethearts, came to Midland, planted their flag, raised their family. But tragically, when I was just a boy of 6 and he was a man of 47, he died of a heart attack. But my mom was tough and resilient, continued to raise my two older sisters and me, and I ended up going into public service. My wife, Cynthia, many of you know when she was the First Lady of Agriculture, when I was Ag Director, was very involved. We've been married 27 years. We have 2 children. And my history with agriculture is the fact that as a member of Congress, I served on the Agriculture Committee, worked on 2 farm bills, 1985 and 1990. I know how the system works. As Ag Director here in Michigan, I helped put through the Right to Farm guidelines. And as Attorney General, I've made sure that we've fought the WOTUS, the Waters of the United States. When Barack Obama was president, we got them adjusted with Donald Trump as president. You'll have a governor who can walk in the front door of the White House to make sure that issues of trade, immigration, wages, economy, relationships, you have someone who will walk right through the front door in the White House, which helps everybody here in this room. As Attorney General, I've issued a couple of Attorney General opinions concerning that the right to farm law preempts local ordinances, which I think is important and consistent viewpoint in my philosophy. Also issued one concerning minimum wages, so exempting small farms. So I have worked and served for all of you for many years. I'm not saying you'd hire me on your farm, but I am saying that you have hired me in the past to serve and be a good voice and advocate. I'm so proud to receive the Silver Plow and Golden Plow, and I'm a card-carrying member of the Michigan Farm Bureau, number 232741, and I'm honored to be in your company. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and welcome this morning, Attorney General.
Thank you.
I'm Laura Braun. I'm a cash crop farmer from just up the road in Ovid Township in Clinton County. And I'm going to start off with the first set of questions for you.
Good. And I know where Ovid is. I've been there, and I know where Clinton County is. So
we're
it's
off
good,
to a good start.
Good to be where I think we're going on a real good start. And I guess
Okay.
my opponent didn't come either, eh? So I think that means you basically have to endorse me now. That's all I can say.
Let's see how this goes.
Whoa. Whoa. Hey, Ken Nobis, will you talk to her or something? For that's I sometimes I'm confident, but I guess you're telling me I got a chance. My favorite movie, by the way. Go ahead.
Okay. First question. If elected governor, what would be the top 3 priorities your new administration would focus on in the first 12 months? As
your next governor, I'm going to win this. We had a big win last week, getting over 50% of the vote in a 4-way primary. Primary doesn't happen, almost ever. And we're going to win in November as well. We're going to finish the job. And as your governor, there are 3 issues that are very important to me, and there are lots of issues, but the next governor will have a small period of time to make sure that big decisions, bold decisions are made to drive Michigan forward. We got to have big aspirations. We can't have tiny, small steps or small goals. I'm a big goal guy, and that's what we'll do when I'm your governor. Number 1, we'll roll back the Granholm income tax increase. And if you see what cutting taxes across America has done with President Trump and the Republicans in Congress, we've cut taxes. We're moving the production of the Ram truck from Mexico to Michigan. When was the last time you saw jobs come back to Michigan instead of being exported? That's happening because of the Trump tax cuts. I want to roll back the Granholm income tax increases. It was supposed to have been temporary, but have been in place now since 2007, and it's cost Michigan families $8 billion. So rolling back income tax rates, number 1. Secondly, auto insurance reform. Wherever I go, people come up to me and talk about auto insurance. I was in a parade in St. Clair Shores, for some of you Macomb, southeastern Michigan folks. A guy came up to me and said, "Schuette, you better cut auto insurance rates." Grabbed me by the shirt. He was relatively polite, but I got his point, right? And the fact is, he told me a story that his daughter's not moving to Michigan because of the high cost of auto insurance. And we need to be a state where we attract people. I'm running for governor because I want us to grow. But when we send a message to people, don't come to Michigan, because we have the highest auto insurance rates in America, on average $1,000 more than any other state, that's wrong. So I'm going to cut auto insurance rates. And thirdly, our 3rd grade reading scores are among the lowest in the nation. So get this, we have the highest auto insurance rates in America and among the lowest 3rd grade reading scores in the country. And that's wrong. We ought to be outraged about it. It means the current approach, current plan hasn't worked. And America's supposed to be what? A shining city on a hill? But if you can't read the directions to get there, you're out of luck. And if you can't spell opportunity, you're out of hope. Something has to change, and when I'm a governor, Michigan's children will read. Reading, the emphasis on that is important. My wife and I went to public school, so did Lisa and her family, and we're going to make sure that parents have choices, and we'll have grade our schools A through F. I have a literacy director smack dab in the governor's office. Those are the 3 issues. To say nothing, we have roads and plenty of issues to talk about, infrastructure as well. Thanks.
You. In your AgriPac questionnaire, you responded that you would cut regulations and implement growth-friendly policies that would make Michigan more attractive to job creators and families and help rebuild our population. Could you please give us some specific examples?
Sure, and part of it I touched on, and here's the picture. You know, Michigan once, after the failed governorship of Jennifer Granholm, we were on life support. All right, we're like you're in the ER room, barely able to move. Now we've rebounded, but here it is. We're still 300,000 jobs short of where Michigan was before the Great Recession. And there are 55 counties in Michigan that have lost population in this decade, right now. You go to certain areas of the state and they have 8-man football teams. When I played quarterback at Midland Dow, and okay, I was only 4-5 at our record, but when I played quarterback at Midland Dow, there were 11 guys on each side of the line. And you know, there are schools in northern Michigan that have to band together to have competition in skiing tournaments. Now, this isn't a story about do you like football and skiing. I like them both. It's a story about population. And the fact is our biggest challenge in Michigan is that we need to grow. And other states are growing faster than we are. And I don't care whether you're in production agriculture, whether you're selling widgets, cars, furniture, what have you. If we don't have a bigger talent pool, and if we don't grow this state, we'll be a smaller, a less significant state. And I'm not asking you to hire me as your governor to manage the decline of our state. Nope. When I'm your governor, when Lisa and I are governor and lieutenant governor, we're going to work very hard to grow our state. And that means, number one, cutting taxes. And why is that important? Because other states are growing faster than we are. And why do you think that is? It's because of their economic climate is better than ours. And if you think about the fact that 110 people move to Nashville, Tennessee every day to live and work, and a plane load of people arrive in Austin, Texas every day to live and work, a 747 plane load, why do they do that? It's not the weather, because it's 110 degrees right now in Dallas, right? Talked to a friend of mine in Las Vegas, and he said it was 105, and I said, well, what do you do? He says, we don't go outside. And so it's not the weather, it's the economic climate. So we need to finish the job in terms of personal property tax elimination. We need to lower our auto insurance rates, and also we need to roll back the income taxes. That's a way to sharpen our edges in terms of our economic toolbox. That's what we need to do. Rules and regulations, we ought to reduce the permit time from the DEQ to 90 days. We need to make sure that we get the job done. And we have to be very aggressive if we're going to compete and win for jobs. And that's why we need to win again. And your jobs in production agriculture will be better if you have a more thriving economy in our state where we're growing faster than other states. I want us to win again. And I want cranes in the sky. I want boots on the ground. And when other states are growing faster than Michigan, we have a problem. Here's the other fact for you. We once had 19 members of Congress in Michigan. After our next census is completed, we'll have 13. Now, what does that tell you? Other states are growing faster than Michigan. And I'm not being negative. I'm just saying we have to have big goals, and we need to make sure that we do this quick when I'm governor to make sure we send a message that this is where Michigan's going in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Several ballot initiatives have been approved by the State Board of Canvassers for the November ballot, including paid sick time leave, recreational marijuana, and redistricting. First, would you please share your thoughts and positions on those? And second, as governor, would you support any reforms to Michigan's ballot initiative process?
I'm opposed to all those initiatives. And number one, and here's the point. And on the issue of marijuana, I'm opposed to the legalization of marijuana, but also support democracy. And whatever the citizens of our state make their decision, I will support and implement. That's what you do as governor. I've taken an oath of office as Attorney General twice to enforce the law and defend the Constitution. I'll continue to do that. And in terms of ballot initiatives, that's something I would work with members of each side of the aisle, Democrat and Republican, as your governor, as we were to go forward. The other issue was on a minimum wage, I believe, and I'm opposed to that. Because you know what, we ought to maximize wages, and we don't need more government mandates. And this is part of this contrast, the choice that voters in Michigan will have between Bill Schuette as a conservative Republican. I want to cut taxes. My opponent, former Senator Whitmer, is for raising taxes. I believe in less government dominance in the marketplace. I want private enterprise to flourish. That's the private sector viewpoint I have, an entrepreneurial lens in which I see Michigan and America. Thank you.
Good morning, Attorney General Schuette. My name is Brian Heffron. I'm a cash crop beef cattle farmer from Kent County.
I knew Ed and Phil. Yeah, you bet.
Family. Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
So my first question for you is, the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development continues to play a valuable role in food safety and market access by providing timely inspections of food and agricultural products. Will your administration continue to support agriculture as a stand-alone agency with sufficient funding for inspection programs?
And this is it's a good question, and this is talk about right up my wheelhouse. As a former director of the Michigan Department of Agriculture, I understand how that place operates. I understand the significance of agriculture as a growth machine. The new Spartan Milk Company, I think, is a really terrific thing. And the point is that agriculture is a part of the DNA of Bill Schuette. I didn't grow up working on a farm, nothing like that. But when I first ran for Congress, I went farm to farm, field to field, and learned a lot. I learned about the significance of agriculture. The men and women are in it that plant a seed, pray for rain, and work hard, understand what you do day in and day out. And I like that ethic. I like that culture, and I understand the importance of MDA and the food safety and food inspection, all of that. We will continue right in that journey, sir.
Many sectors of our agricultural industry are in very poor economic conditions and have been for a period of years. And it is a very stressful time financially for our farmers. As governor, what state policies or initiatives would you lead that could spur further agricultural growth and investment?
And this issue is, how are we doing in rural areas? What can we do to make sure there's more growth? A couple of things. I like the concept of agriculture renaissance zones. I think that's a positive step forward for our state, and number one. Secondly, all of us have a responsibility of having Michigan be a growth state. And I'm running for governor to grow our state. And every county and every community needs to have a growth approach. We need to, and I'll help lead this, that our counties, our 83 counties and our 2 magnificent peninsulas, need to work together about what is our growth plan for more people. What can we do to sharpen our economic toolbox, incentives that are balanced between big business, small business, they're all big in my opinion, to have more jobs in rural parts of the state. Because what does it do? When the economy shrinks, it impacts people in rural areas. I was in Sanilac County about 2 months ago, and I was talking to the superintendent who said, we used to have 16,000 people in our school system, and now we have 8,000. So what does that mean? And I drive through some communities where the hardware store is shuttered, and there are fewer kids in the classroom, fewer dollars getting into the economy. It impacts everybody. I know how that works. And so the fact is that we need to have a second approach is every community needs to have a growth plan. Thirdly, we need to have access for our markets. I understand that agriculture is about exports. And as your governor, I will be able to work with you and Carl Bednarski and your team of Farm Bureau directors, other commodity groups, to make sure what we can do to help sell Michigan products. The next governor needs to be someone who's aggressive, someone who understands agriculture, and is an advocate for foreign markets. And with respect to the Trump administration trying to renegotiate trade deals, some of the problems we've seen with the Canadians in terms of their products and absence of access for American products in their country, you'll have someone who will be an advocate for you to resolve these tariff and trade issues so that we get a better deal, a better shake for agriculture. I think that's part of what I can do as governor as well. And then finally, reducing your taxes puts more money in your pockets, and you get to keep more of what you make. Those are 4 items specifically that I think are important for agriculture's future and impacts rural America and rural Michigan.
The need for skilled, legal, and reliable labor force in agriculture is a constant and growing need for farms. Immigration is the responsibility of the federal government, but what role do you see for the governor's office and state government?
The question involves immigration, and yes, it is. It's a federal issue, obviously, and we need to have a hopeful immigration policy, and we need to have one that's welcoming. But everyone needs to play by the same rules. There have to be rules that we follow. It needs to be done, and you know what? There's no place for sanctuary cities in Michigan or across this country. And as governor, I'll make sure that there are no sanctuary cities in the state of Michigan. And the other issue on immigration is that I, as a former member of Congress, I will work with our members of Congress on immigration policy. They need to get the job done, our senators and members of Congress. And that's a skill set that I have as a former member of Congress, that I understand how Washington works, and I can help on that. It also helps I can, walk in the front door of the White House. President Trump has endorsed me for governor and my candidacy on a variety of different issues. In the last 2 months, I've been in the White House 3 separate times on human trafficking, opioid, and criminal justice reform. And the relationship I have with the president, talking with him about issues and in the Oval Office, and he called me on election night, talked for 15 minutes on a wide variety of issues, from trade to a number of other items as well. That helps Michigan because you have an advocate named Bill Schuette who can work with the White House on federal policies. Sir.
Thank you, Attorney General Schuette. I am Grant Reif. I'm a district sales manager for a seed company in Southeast Michigan and a professional country music singer, and president of Washtenaw County Farm Bureau.
No kidding. So when's your next gig? When?
Right now.
Right now. That's pretty funny. I was in. Let me just say, I was in Sanilac County, and a guy named Dean Burden, who has an organic black turtle bean organic plant and grows the beans. And I was getting a tour of it, and he has a brand new John Deere tractor, 85, 92 tractor. I might have gotten the numbers confused, but it was a beautiful machine. So we went for a drive. He's driving. I'm sitting watching. I said, Dean, can I drive? And he kind of stopped real quick and talked about auto insurance reform. And so Dean moved over. I got behind the throttle. I'm driving that John Deere tractor, and he was perspiring while I'm driving. And I thought of that Kenny Chesney song, "She Thinks My Tractor's Sexy." So I was having fun. I was having fun driving that tractor. Back to you, Mr. Country Western.
Agriculture is highly dependent on a modern and efficient infrastructure. We still have a long way to go in repairing and upgrading our roads, bridges, ports, and locks, and providing access to high-speed internet in many areas of our state. What specific initiatives would you roll out, and where does that funding come from?
Great, thank you. The questions on infrastructure, roads, bridges, the SULOCs, what have you, and I look at it this way. Nobody's on the road more often than I across Michigan's 83 counties. And I've experienced, pothole season, at all times of the year, so to speak. And here's what we need to do in terms of roads and bridges and infrastructure, because it's part of Michigan's future. We need to be a first world economy, right? But we can't be a first world economy if we have third world roads. And it doesn't work. We need to get our product to markets, and we need to make sure I get our people to work. And with lousy roads, it just doesn't work. So number one, we need to have a full and complete review of the Michigan Department of Transportation policy and how they allocate road funding. And the fact is that, everyone talks about miles per gallon, MPG, but we also need to see miles paved per gallon. So what does your dollar and cent get you when MDOT paves a road? Secondly, we need to have warranties and guarantees on our roads and bridges that we're building. You get guarantees on the products that you purchase. We need to do that in terms of taxpayers here in the state of Michigan. Third, I supported the elimination of the prevailing wage statute, which means that for public construction projects, now there'll be competitive bidding, and it'll save taxpayers money. It was a good decision to eliminate that, and it will be another $250 million saved by the government by the elimination of the prevailing wage statute. All that money should go towards roads and bridges, in my opinion. And then finally, number four, we have a $58 billion budget. That's a lot of money. It's gone up over the years. And leadership is about decision making. You all, the women and men here, and others in production agriculture, families across Michigan, make decisions every day on what's best for your business. Well, I understand that roads The roads are a priority. And when I'm governor, they'll be a priority. And we need to make sure that we continue to invest in Michigan's infrastructure so that we can have first world roads instead of third world roads. And that's where we get the money. Now, my Democrat opponent, they're going to want to raise taxes. And if you think you're just not paying enough in taxes, well, you probably vote for somebody else. But the fact is, we need to make decisions, and I want to lower taxes so we can compete with other states. I don't want to raise taxes like my opponents will.
Thank you. You're welcome. In some areas of Michigan, local governments continue to disregard Michigan's right to farm law by enacting zoning and other ordinances or restrictions that prevent growth of existing and new legitimate agricultural operations. In many cases, farmers are left with no recourse but to engage in unnecessary and costly, lengthy litigation. You've been a very strong proponent and supporter of our right to farm law, and we are appreciative of that. How can we help grow agriculture's economic contribution to Michigan's economy if farms aren't able to expand and grow?
Well, and I understand the significance of agriculture, and that when local units of government try to zone you out or limit or inhibit your ability to grow and produce your products of, the wide variety of items that we grow, that hurts you. So I've been one of those who's stood by the right to farm laws. I mentioned earlier today that I issued that Attorney General opinion that right to farm laws can't be, or local ordinances can't exempt right to farm. So I'm on your side on that, and I'll just continue to do that as your governor. And I'll work with you legislatively if we need to do other items to preserve it. And here, this is the point. I have a background as a former member of Congress and a former member of the Michigan Senate. I understand the dynamic of the women and men engaged in agriculture. And the dynamic of the women and men engaged in the legislature, how they need to deliver, perform their job, their responsibilities. And I'll be a governor who's on the floor of the House and Senate working. Lisa Postumus-Lyons will be there as well, because she has expertise in this as a former state representative who got things done. And we'll work to make sure that we work hand in glove with the Farm Bureau, the leader in agriculture, and I'll be part of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Great Lakes are truly a Michigan treasure, and we are blessed to be surrounded by 2/3 of the world's fresh water. Michigan is a riparian state, and water is essential for our citizens and for our farmers to grow our food. There have been attempts over the years, and even recently, to commoditize this water by taxing bottled water, which is a very dangerous and slippery slope. Please share your thoughts on this topic.
Thank you. This issue of water use is also, in essence, a private property rights issue and riparian rights issue, and I understand that. And this is about how you view life in the world. This country was built on the issue of private property, work, ethic, ownership, incentive, no guarantees. And part of that is that you have private property rights. So that doesn't mean you can't be, that you can be irresponsible. No, and the stewardship ideas and the stewardship responsibilities that's packed in your DNA, I understand. Because farmers are sensitive. You want to leave the ground better than you found it. That's what you do. And your private property rights and water ownership are essential to that, and I'll help you maintain those rights and private property rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General. That concludes the questions. Would you please now like to make a 2-minute closing comment statement?
I'd love to make a 2-minute closing comment, please. One, you know me. I've been involved in agriculture policy for a long time. I have this incredible privilege to work with production agriculture as a member of Congress, as director of the Michigan Department of Agriculture, as Attorney General, working in a variety of different ways. My skill set and experience is second to none. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. But the fact is, I work hard, I'm honest, I understand how government works and how it needs to work for you. And the relationship that we have with Farm Bureau, that I've been privileged to learn from you about agriculture, is really part of who I am. and I appreciate it very, very much. I want your endorsement. I'd like your endorsement today. I'd like you, when you're done, I'd like to make that endorsement. I'm making the ask. And all the other commodity groups here, join with me. I'm going to win this, and you're going to have someone who's governor who understands agriculture, understands the significance of having counsel and advice from people in agriculture, and I need your endorsement. And I need it now because we're moving forward, 83 days to go, and when we're done, we're going to win this race. And it's all about making sure we cut taxes, roll back auto insurance rates, improve our reading scores, build roads that are first class, not third world, and you can be part of this. I want to have this journey as your governor. I'd like to do it together. I'd like to do it as soon as possible. I'm working hard, and I'm appreciate greatly being with you. My mother, some of you may have known her, used to say, Bill, you're judged by the company you keep, and you're judged by those who are your friends. I've got a lot of friends in this room, and I'm proud to be in your company, and I look forward to being your on-duty governor working with the Michigan Farm Bureau and farm groups across the state. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's thank him.